Welcome to Fast Pitch. This is the Milken Institute's version of Shark Tank. My name is Daniel Gorfine, and I am the Milken Institute's version of Mark Cuban, or at least I like to think so. At the Milken Institute, we focus on job creation, improving health, and ensuring that promising ideas and individuals have access to capital. When you look at entrepreneurship, these three elements are critically intertwined. Entrepreneurs dare to dream big, but they are also doers. Entrepreneurs build, create, and they hire. And entrepreneurs solve critical global challenges related to things like sustainability, energy, education, health, and well-being. All of these are core areas of focus for the Kairos Society, our partners for today's event. The Kairos Society finds great entrepreneurs from more than 50 countries around the world who are working on innovative solutions to critical world problems. They help accelerate these ventures through resources and supportive partners with the goal of getting them to market. Today, we are joined by an incredible number of Kairos entrepreneurs who will pitch their businesses to you and our judges. Our judges are leaders in their respective fields and bring a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that they will share with our entrepreneurs and with the audience. Each venture today will be judged and assessed by you and by our judges under 4 critical criteria. The first is growth potential, financial strategy, on-stage presentation, and impact. I think that this last one, impact, is critically important here. Thomas Edison once said, "I never perfected an invention that I did not think about first in terms of the service that it might give others. I find out what the world needs, then I proceed to invent." So before we move on, I'm going to call up a slide here that's going to show how we're going to vote at the end, because the ultimate winner of today's pitch competition will be voted on by our audience. So this slide here shows you our text number, 22333. So, well, it was fleeting. But what we'll do is at the end, it's up there on the bigger screen. So at the end of the competition, we'll put this slide up again, and at that point, we'll ask you to text one of these pitch numbers to vote for the winner. So with that, let me briefly introduce the entrepreneurs that you're going to be hearing from today. Delian Asperhov is CEO of Nightingale. Delian left MIT and after receiving a Thiel Fellowship. He grew up, a fun fact about Delian is that he grew up in communist Bulgaria and he studied math as a way to ensure that he could get out of the country to study overseas. We'll also hear from Caroline Pugh, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Virtual U. Caroline is the former Washington, D.C. president of Kairos, was named the Youth Ambassador of Entrepreneurship for the state of Virginia by former U.S. Chief Technology Officer Anish Chopra, and has been ranked as one of the top 50 entrepreneurs in the state of Virginia. Fun fact about Caroline is that she is of British and Korean ancestry and speaks both languages fluently. Riley Ennis is the founder of Immuticon. Riley attended Dartmouth before becoming a Thiel Fellow. Fun fact about Riley is that he started his science career in high school while working on an immuno-oncology project at Georgetown, where one of his first experiments led to a large explosion and subsequent lab fire. He assures us that his skills in the lab have advanced since then. Katalin Voss is the founder of Senshin, and he's an innovator in residence at Stanford StartX. Katalin is currently attending Stanford. His fun fact is that he learned how to pass a color test using brightness schemes so that he could one day become an astronaut despite being colorblind. Finally, Spencer Hewitt is founder of Skip and a Kairos Fellow. Spencer is also a Thiel Fellow and was named as one of Peter Thiel's 20 under 20. Spencer has wanted to be an inventor since the age of 4. So our judges today need very little introduction, but we will start with Bonin Bao, who is the Vice President of Global Media and Consumer Engagement at Mondelez International. We also have with us Steve Case, Chairman and CEO of Revolution and co-founder of AOL. Ryan Kavanaugh, founder and CEO of Relativity Media. And Lynn Tilton, who is the founder and CEO of Patriarch Partners. Now at this point, I'm going to ask all of our judges to give a few remarks as to what they typically look for in these kinds of presentations, and then specifically provide some advice for us, for our entrepreneurs today. So with that, let me turn it over to Bonin.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Daniel told me he was going to try to be funny. I don't know if that worked out for him or not. There you go. But I think you set it up right, which is really growth potential, scalability. What is the underlining business model? I think while the presentation is important, I think the last one and the first two are probably the most important. And then impact. What's the potential impact that it can have on society at large? And then I think, have they identified a real need, consumer need? And so that's, I think one of the biggest things is just because you can have a great idea doesn't mean that people will actually buy it. So have they identified a real consumer insight and built a product that can deliver against that, that can scale and grow quickly? So I think for me, that's really what I'll be looking for.
Just to add to that, number one, big idea. I mean, I think we got to fall in love with the idea, believe it's an important idea, kind of a battle worth fighting. That there are a lot of kind of interesting products or apps that are might be around for a little while, looking for the things that really could have a transformative impact on society and more built to last companies. That idea is clearly number one. Number two, obviously, is people, partly the entrepreneur, but also the beginnings of the team that surround them. Entrepreneurship, even though the founding CEOs get a lot of attention, entrepreneurship really is a team sport, so getting a sense of how they're thinking about the team is critical, and the beginnings of some plan, some way to execute this. Thomas Edison, you quoted earlier, another great Thomas Edison quote is, "Vision without execution is hallucination." So having a good idea is great, having a great team is great, but you have to have some theory of the case in terms of how you're going to execute against that and try to take that idea to scale.
I think from my perspective, the most important thing that I'm going to look for today and in general in entrepreneurs are people that are willing to take a chance. Something that really looks at a critical problem or a critical question and answers a problem in a big way, offers something that other people aren't doing, isn't trying to compete with something that's already out there, and actually takes a big chance and clearly something that people are willing to jump fully into. And I think that's, to me, that's the most important.
Every business, it goes from the product backwards. So for me, I'm really going to be looking at, is there a product and will it have a place in the market? And people are looking for two things. They're looking for design to be enveloped in elegance and for disruption, which is that wow factor that comes from a new technology or science. So that'll be my main focus. But I also want to see someone who's got the start of building a business, because your ideas are much more valuable if you can go it alone. And so when I look at a business, I look at the people, which is, do you have a team of people? Do you have a plan, which is the dream of what this company will become? Do you have any process in place? Like, do you understand your financial model, your pricing model? Is there anything there? And then really the pace. How quickly can you and your team move to get this product to market before someone else does?
Good advice for our entrepreneurs. So our first guinea pig presenter is Delian. Delian, CEO of Nightingale. You'll have 3 minutes to present your venture.
Do I start it? How does this click? Can we bring up my first slide? Oh, back a slide. Every 20 minutes, a child is diagnosed with autism in the US. Imagine that's your child. Their therapy will cost $60,000 a year until they are 22 years old. Autism can also be a huge gift, not just a disability. Daniel Tammet was diagnosed with autism and epilepsy. Through therapy, Daniel has become one of the world's most brilliant mathematicians, published a best-selling novel, and even given a TED Talk. The most effective behavioral therapies for autism are very data-driven. If a student can recognize 10 different emotions, she moves on to facial recognition therapy. If she can only recognize 5, she returns for more emotion recognition therapy. There are clear stepping stones that allow her to eventually integrate into society. The US spends over $137 billion a year on autism services, and the national rate of autism is growing roughly 10% annually since 1993. The US spends an additional $300 billion on similar mental health therapies and services. However, currently many of these therapy programs are extremely overpriced and inefficient because much of this data collection and analysis is done by hand. Because of this additional overhead, many of these programs have waiting lists that are 2 to 3 times larger than their capacity. The problem is, most therapists spend 80% of their day doing administrative tasks and paperwork completely unrelated to delivering therapy. These tasks are required in order to track students' progress because that's how billing in autism works. Nightingale allows therapists to spend more of their time actually delivering therapy. My name is Delian, and my co-founder, Eric, and I are working on a solution that allows the parents, teachers, and therapists of autistic children to record behavioral data using their phone rather than on their huge clipboards. We automatically generate the forms a therapist needs to submit in order to get reimbursed. This allows therapists to treat 3 times as many students. We automatically help make care decisions and adjust therapy based off of results. While a therapist might only see 50 students in a month, Nightingale will be seeing thousands and can transfer lessons learned from school to school. We already have 7 autism therapy programs paying to use our product in the Bay Area, and we have tons of inbound and are scrambling to scale. Last Friday, I spent all day in one of our programs and ended up accidentally losing an hour and a half coding with one of the savants. I also watched a therapist use our product, and they absolutely love it. I've come to appreciate the impact that data can have on quality of care ever since acting as my grandmother's caregiver while she was being treated for breast cancer while I was in high school. From there, I went to MIT, where I met my co-founder, Eric, and we discovered that we both had a passion for artificial intelligence and robotics, and we realized we could apply that passion to help therapists make data-driven decisions. We've been working together ever since through the support of StartX, Y Combinator, and Peter Thiel through the Thiel Fellowship. We are Nightingale, and we're working on the future of data-driven therapy. We've already raised most of our seed round. Come talk to us if you'd like to help tackle autism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Delian, and I will turn to our judges for some commentary. So we'll start this time from right to left with Lynn.
Well, I love your intent on the problem that you're trying to solve, and owning a home health care company, I do understand how important it is driving data and driving information quickly and getting it to the insurance companies and getting more therapy sessions in. But you didn't talk at all about, you say you're in play, but are you in play? Is there any income coming in? What is your plan? I mean, how do you say you want to expand, but how do you make money? How are you going to expand? Where you're going to go? Your idea is great, your plan, but when I talk to you about people, plan, process, all I know is that there are 2 of you, that you have a product, but I have no plan for which to think about this growing or how you make money.
Am I allowed to respond? Or?
Can you answer that? Or?
Sure, go ahead.
So we charge therapy programs $40 per student per month. So it's just like a flat software as a service fee. And we've scaled up to 7 schools and have been probably signing up a school once a week since then, since launching about 8 weeks ago.
How many students?
About a total of 80 students right now.
So I think, first of all, it's very noble what you're doing. I've studied a little bit on autism, and clearly I think it's very prominent, as you're pointing out here, that we're spending a lot of money on, and there's nobody that's really looking for solutions. There's people that are looking for answers, but no solutions. So we actually employ some autistic students who have had to learn how to interact, and I've seen firsthand that the most important thing is actually understanding social cues, which is what they don't have. So my question to you first, and then I give some feedback, is what's your plan in terms of your scalability? So right now, it sounds like you're making about $3,200 a month, and obviously, if you're using Google Glasses and iPhones and technology, I got to imagine that the cost is more than $60 a student. Are you working with Google? Are they giving you support? Are they subsidizing it? And how do you take this to what seems like, you pointed out here, it's $120 billion industry. How do you take a chunk of that? Because I got to imagine every student would need to use this. Do you have government subsidies? What are you looking towards?
Yeah, just to clarify, there's a Google Glass company that does have to pay for that equipment. Our autism therapy programs, they're responsible for buying their own tablets, setting up their whole system. We're just the software that lays on top of that, and it's an app. So there's no cost structure for us beyond paying our own employees. So the $40 per student per month definitely covers that, and we think it's a large enough market to really expand out and turn it into a real company through that.
And what's your projections, if you don't mind me asking? What do you think you'll get to in 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, so there's about 500,000 students that are in autism private schools right now in the US. So capturing just 1% of that market over the course of the next 2 years brings us up to $6 million in annual revenue.
And how do you protect yourself that, like you said, Google Glass is obviously an open platform. How do you not prove it works and then have, one of the big healthcare manufacturers or a Siemens or somebody come out and say, that's great, thanks, now we're going to go, make it bigger?
Yeah, so I think there's two competitors that primarily could go after this. There's the low tech, which are like the vendors that already have a lot of established relationship with these schools that provide them textbooks, CDs, and things like that. I don't think they're particularly well suited to making a great software product. And a lot of these larger companies like Siemens, or the one I would be most concerned about is like Epic, trying to make like an autism-specific EMR. It's something where the needs of this are so different than something like a cardiology department, where there they have billing codes for statins, or there they have triple bypass surgery, versus the billing in autism is very, very different. And so it's just like a fundamentally different product and market that you're trying to serve. So that's sort of my answer.
The last question is, what's your valuation?
Current, so we've raised most of our seed round at a $5 million pre-money convertible note.
So just how much time do we have for each of these? Or I know we want to be fair to everybody. So should I just make a quick comment and
60 seconds and we'll...
I celebrate the fact you're attacking a problem in healthcare because it is one of the industry's most in need of disruption, technology, more consumer adoption. I think I applaud that. And I also think it's smart that you have a partnership strategy. Maybe there's ways, instead of having to get these 6 at a time, are there partners that you can have that have 600 or 6,000 and you can accelerate it? And the other thing to think about is on the policy side, which is going to be a big factor in healthcare, is what does the FDA do with things like this, and is it going to below or above the radar? But I think it's great you're attacking a big problem and have come up with a creative solution. So good for you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So I was thinking the same thing. I think that, first of all, agree, it's very noble. I also think that, having worked a lot with the pharmaceutical world, that the caregiver, it impacts so much on the caregiver. So having a solution that they're actually participating in the health is beneficial, not just to the person receiving it, but also the caregiver. So I think that's really important. I still have some concern about how defensible it is right now. It looks like it's a fast growth play at that 500,000. Again, not a lot of dollars right now. So I love the point around partnerships. Are there other strategics that you can map with that are not just the children's hospitals, but also maybe a J&J or any of those kind of folks? And then I think there's probably even a bigger business model that's built around data. I mean, being an advisor on a bunch of those kind of companies, that data play is so huge, and you're now capturing that data and you're in the hand. So as a piece of a growth engine.
So Mondelez is going to put all the money up?
Maybe. Yeah.
All right, well, let's give Delian a round of applause.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, guys.
So next up, we have Caroline with Virtual You, and she's told me she's going to present in British.
How many of you have participated in physical activity in the past week or know someone who has? Raise your hand. So a lot of us are very active, and being active means that you're setting goals and really trying to track your progress. Right now, there's no standard, cost-effective, intuitive way to track your biometric data. You have skin calipers, you have BMI tests, and you have your standard scales. But they only provide one measurement of comparison and don't give you the full picture as to how your body is exactly changing over time. Here at Virtual You, using our own proprietary 3D human scanning technology, we give you your height, weight, BMI, lean muscle mass, body fat percentage, resting heart rate, as well as circumferences of any body part, all in a matter of 10 seconds. We do this using our 3D body scanner, which I'm actually unveiling today here at Milken for the first time ever. And this is going to be deployed across the United States at your local gyms. In order to give you the best consumer experience possible, we have a 22-inch edge-to-edge display screen in the middle where you press Start Scan to begin the whole process. After your scan, you get that 3D photorealistic model sent straight to your phone, as well as all your biometric data, so you can track your progress and share it with your friends and your trainer. This is the first time you're going to be able to see yourself in 3D on your mobile device to this level of accuracy. We're taking some 24 million points of data. That means every half a millimeter is being accounted for on your body. So I have a case story for you guys, literally a case story. AOL currently has over 5,000 employees. Given that an average health assessment takes about 1 hour, this means that if you wanted to know the entire health of AOL, it would take 418 business days. With a VFit scanner, that would only take 18 and a half days. Right now, the model is that we're leasing the unit, so there's no upfront capital cost to the actual gyms to purchase a unit, and we have the production capacity to do over 300 of these a month. With more users and increased locations across the United States, we're taking a lot of biometric data, which means we can report on the entire health of a region. So for example, the average BMI of Beverly Hills, which I'm sure is really good. The power of data reporting is also extremely valuable to the gym. So for example, one of our clients recently asked us, can you get the combined waistlines of all the members in our gym over a period of time? And the answer was yes, and because of that, they were able to say our members lost a combined total of 1 mile on their waistlines this past spring, and be able to report on statistics like that they weren't able to before. And for other industries like retail, we're able to say if more medium-sized t-shirts were actually ordered in a specific region so that they can become smarter about their industry and inventory. Here at Virtual You, we're making you smarter about business, fitness, and life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. We'll start this time from left to right. So Bonin, please.
Sure. So I really like this idea first. We talked a little bit about it before. I still don't understand what the projection is. So what's the full market potential? Maybe I missed that. It would be nice to understand how much capital you've raised already, because one concern I have is that it's a huge capital-intensive hardware-based business, and with the lease model, you're funding it all. So that would one of the questions I have. And is there a vision for a longer-term data opportunity? I think that it's nice to be able to tell the whole waistline, but how do you package that data up and really sell that in a broader perspective? So just understanding if you guys have a view of that. And then is there any thought about miniaturizing or putting these closer to home, not just the gym market? It feels somewhat limiting to some extent, but.
So the last question you just asked is actually my favorite one to answer, because the hardware itself is very simple. So the main components of the actual scanner is in the 4 pillars that you see on the sides. The 4 pillars can actually be taken out, and you can bolt it into any existing structure, which means you can make any room into a scanner. So yes, you could have it in your home, and eventually I'd love for you to be able to literally wave your iPhone over your body and be able to get a 3D scan. Going back to your capital question, we just raised our seed round of $625,000 from a couple of VCs and angels. And we actually have a partnership with our manufacturing firm where they're doing deferred payment. So by the time we recoup and generate enough revenue for the cost of 1 unit, we're then paying them. So they're giving us 60 to 90 days of deferred payment.
But it's a lease model, which means you're dependent on the gyms driving people in to use it, right?
Yeah, we do revenue sharing with the gym to incentivize them based on how many users they have engaged in the system, and more users they have, more revenue that they get.
So first of all, I love the presentation. Of course, the case story was the highlight of it. The partnership aspect I mentioned earlier, I think is really important. You mentioned you had a partner, figuring out ways to scale it with both hardware partners and gym partners, so you're not doing it one at a time, is a big deal. But the other thing is, if there is some way over time to get out of the hardware business and be in the software services business, that's an easier business to scale. Even Nike, that recently kind of shut down their hardware, fuel band business and said we should focus on software and services. I don't know if you can get there, but if the hardware does get obsolete, and by the time you put it in there 3 years later, something new is going to be there. So if there is any way to let the hardware guys or the gym guys invest in the capital and the hardware, and you focus on the software services platform, that'd be a more scalable business. But congratulations, great business.
Thank you.
So I really like your presentation a lot. It's beautifully done. I think, unfortunately, I think you have a very challenging business model. I think you're in a really, really good field, and obviously people are very focused on health, but just from my calculations, you're going to need to have working capital between $1.5 million and $4 million a month to be able to support your build out, and you're looking for $6 a month per consumer per gym. And I don't see the average consumer or user in a gym saying, I'm going to pay $6 to know where I'm burning the most. What they care about is, how do I look and how do I feel? So now you're asking the gyms to subsidize that $6 a month, and there's only so many large-scale chain gyms that are going to look and say, I'm going to take what's already a low margin, whatever the monthly is, and take $6 and put it towards this for each consumer, so that I have that data to really for an advertising capability, which advertising is already a problem. So, I think I agree with both Bonin and Steve that you have to really look at the data side and what you can do with it, and it's not about consumers and getting $6 a month. And then finally, I would just say that there's very few gyms that are going to give up that much space. So if it really does work, now you're having lines of people, you're going to need multiple of them per gym. And a lot of the gym equipment companies give free equipment just to be in that space.
Right.
We've talked about this before, and first of all, you did a great job. You're so poised, and that counts for a lot. But I think you need to go where the money is, and I think you need to turn this into an avatar for clothing. I think at the gym, you've got to get into gyms, you've got to get them to take it on, you've got to get them to pay. The hardware will take a long time to pay back. If you can somehow, with all the information you're dating, create the avatar and then have people create the clothing so that when you're online buying clothing, it fits your body.
Yeah.
And you take a piece of, if you want a service model, you take a piece of every dollar of clothing that's bought because it's bought with an avatar, then I think you have a home run and I'm going to be your partner. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point, we actually started the company for fashion, where the first 6 to 8 months of our company, we actually developed the technology that Lynn is talking about, where you would have that 3D model of yourself and literally on your iPad be able to drag and drop that piece of clothing you wanted to try on from J. Crew, for example, and we would tell you exactly what size you need to get and how it was going to look on you. About after 8 months that we started the company, we realized that fashion wasn't going to be the first adopter of the technology. We knew we could make immediate impact in the health and fitness market, and that's where we're starting first. But eventually, yes, we'd love to go back into fashion.
You need to go back because it's going to be it's the model that's going to make you the money, and someone's going to do it. And you've gone this far, you should go. This other model is just going to be too hard to make money on. The payback, by the time you pay back each machine, it's going to be obsolete.
All right.
Really.
Let's all thank Caroline here. And next up we have Riley with Immuticon.
Hey everyone. So I am the guy who started the explosion in the lab, and I promise no mice were harmed in the process. And the first question I asked myself when I was doing oncology research was, why can't we cure cancer? We're always talking about shrinking. Why do you want to shrink it? Just destroy it, remove it completely. And through 3 years of research in immuno-oncology and studying therapies and molecular pathways, I kind of mapped out the universe of why we can't cure cancer into 2 buckets. Drug resistance, meaning the tumor finds a way to get around your drug, and then cancer stem cells, which just recently have been published as stem cell-like cancer cells that spread all around your body and they cause metastasis. And collectively, this leads to recurrence. I like to think of the state of the art as we're treating cancer like a detour sign. We're going up, we're saying, go this way, the tumor finds another way and regrows. Why can't we build a roadblock? So our team is a team of graduate students. We are working and have been working on targeted therapies, specifically looking at the molecular biology of cancer stem cells. And what we believe the next generation of therapies involves are drugs that target these specific pathways of the cancer stem cells. And what we've been able to do is we're working with the National Cancer Institute, where we have identified a drug which targets these specific parts of the cancer stem cells. And what we found is in the multi-drug resistant tumors, 88% of tumors, we're seeing high efficacy in comparison to drugs that Genentech and some of the big players are building in the antibody drug world. And what we're able to do is, through the publications and the mice data and understanding the structural pieces of this drug, improve both the safety and the efficacy of current treatments because we're targeting those cancer stem cells. So what we are planning to do is de-risking the project through collaborations with institutions like Stanford, and we have 2 other pharmaceutical collaborations who are interested in helping us move from a drug, a concept, into patients, and understand that process and how we're going to be able to do that and raise money in order to do that as well. And what we're building is a data package. This data package will show the efficacy and safety of this drug to work with our collaborators to move it into a first-in-human study. And right now, we're looking for a small amount of capital in order to build this molecule and then begin testing it in mice and non-human primate studies. And we're working with co-founders and builders of these companies who know the experiments, they know what to do, and have helped us design this data package in order to get to a place where Spirogen just got bought out recently, and they're a cancer toxin business, and we're pushing for the next generation where we're looking at stem cells in particular and destroying those tumors which we believe are the drivers of recurrence. And in order to do that, we need to work through a partnership model in order to build up our potential. And we're a team, as I said, and what we really believe is putting the patient first. So one thing that we do is on my Friday evenings, I spend time in hospice. And I sit with patients and I ask them what they're going through, and I spend time in that way. And it's important for us, just from an empathy perspective, to really understand what are the current clinical unmet needs, and our team is really dedicated to solving those. And we're working with some of the greatest advisors, people who have built these type of technologies before, and they're excited around how we're targeting cancer stem cells for the future of oncology therapeutics. Thank you.
Well, Riley, I'm glad you didn't stop after the first fire. Lynn, let's start with you, please.
I'm just trying to figure out, you're at the very initial stages of raising seed money?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been just working on the research?
Yeah.
And because biotech is not where I spend a lot of my time, what is the pathway? How long is it going to take, and how much money do you think you'll have to raise before you actually have something that someone would want to buy?
Yeah, so our goal is to build this data package. And what this data package does, it's all preclinical, which is mouse, and then the non-human primate studies. And within a year, with the capital we have from the seed funding perspective, would put us in a place where a pharmaceutical company would help us move into the clinic and would purchase the drug and move it into a specific indication. So let's say prostate cancer. So they would have all the rights within prostate cancer to develop this drug with their target because they're interested in cancer stem cells. And that's the relationships we have right now. So it's de-risking, but it's allowing us to internally grow the business by using the revenue streams by these collaborations.
Admirable.
So I'm going to start and end with the same, and you'll probably like the beginning and end, but not the in-between. I think obviously what you're doing and your focus is incredible, especially working in hospice, and I don't want what I'm going to say to dissuade you. I just happen to know a lot about this field because I invest a lot in biotech, particularly in cancer, and my father happened to start a cancer cure that he recently sold to Juno. So it's the big problem that I see with what you're working on is that actually the problem isn't that people are just trying to find drugs to prolong life or shrink cancer. They're all trying to cure it, and I haven't yet seen a cancer cure that doesn't say 100% cure rate in rats and mice. And that's because rats and mice are not a good model for humans. They've proven to be actually a really bad model. They don't operate the same at all. And actually now there's many times that they're finding where it doesn't work in rats and mice and it actually will work in humans. So there's almost no correlation. The second problem is that the problem with cancer is not drug resistance. The problem with cancer is that our T cells, that we have to fight disease in the body, don't recognize the cancer or can't actually connect to it. The stem cells, which I also know a lot about, have proven to be very ineffective in cancer in general. And there's been a lot of groups that have tried and a lot that have failed. So I think that, I hate to say it, but the route you're going down, which is particularly focusing on stem cells and using kind of the 88% efficacy on rats is not any indication that it's going to work. And in fact, there are a lot of companies that keep trying to put a lot of money into this. The thing I'll leave it with is the idea that you're going to sell this before you go into phase 1 to a company that is going to focus on one type of cancer, that doesn't happen. I've heard that from every company I've invested in. You're going to need $100 million in 15, maybe $500 million in 15 years before it's even going to be a viable sale. I would really focus. There's a huge future right now on how to turn your T cells on and how to get those T cells mobilized. And this company that my dad created, he sold to Juno, has an 88% cure rate on actual brain tumors in humans. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the future is for this.
Yeah, thank you.
So I earlier said one of the key bits of advice to entrepreneurs is to think big, have a big idea, and targeting curing cancer is a big idea. So congratulations on picking a battle worth fighting. I also think it's great that you're bringing this partnership mentality. We've talked about it, but there's an African proverb that I'm always reminded of when I'm thinking about business like this, which if you want to go quickly, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, you must go together. So whether it be the partnership with Stanford or NCI or other things, I think that is really terrific. I do think these things are going to be more expensive to scale. But you got to start somewhere. And I think there are going to be breakthrough models over the next decade that really do change the paradigm of drug development. So maybe you're able to do that. And perhaps one of the sources of funding, this whole area of impact investing, has gotten more interesting. A lot of foundations that have been just focused on grants for decades are now starting to look at investing in companies that really can move their mission forward. So that might be a place to look for some of the funding.
Okay, great.
Again, would echo really big idea, very admirable. I spent a lot of time working in the pharmaceutical space, especially on the business development side and how they look at buying, new drugs. And the one thing I would say, which is very promising here, is you have a good set of advisors, real advisors. I mean, the Genentechs, the Novartis. So that, I'm hoping that they're echoing some of the concerns or that have been laid on the table. It's such a hard business, though. It's really such a hard business. The one big piece of advice I would say is I'm just concerned that what you're trying to raise for the bigness of your idea might just be too small. I just don't think, I've never heard numbers that small succeed in biotech. And so I'm just a little concerned about maybe you're underestimating the cost that you're going to have to go through.
Can I just add one thing real quick? I just want to say that don't give up, because I was told no, by the way, they told me no last week. I've been told no since I started, and just because this might not be the exact right, solution, you're on the right path, and I would just keep at it.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, let's thank Riley.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Cataline with Senshin.
All right, good afternoon. Okay, cool. I want to start this with a story of a friend of mine who has come very close to my heart. This is David, and David, like 1 in 42 boys, has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And one of the things that David struggles with is recognizing facial expressions, right? So some of the social cues that we kind of take for granted to be able to see in faces, David actually has to learn throughout his life. And his dad recalls this beautiful story of how in a family, every evening when the kids would go to bed, David and his entire family would gather in front of the bathroom mirror and they would brush their teeth, and everyone would make faces, and David would be the one to actually point them all out. And I think that's a beautiful story of how facial expression recognition can be facilitated in autism. Unfortunately, that's not really how it's done today. The prevailing approach in behavioral therapy is flashcards, right? And one of the problems with that, though, is that does not always translate to the social cue that we see in real life. So, for example, my smile might be very different from the happy smile of that girl, right? So what I propose is that we take behavioral therapy away from the flashcards and kind of into the real life situation and something similar of what David is doing. So we've developed a Google Glass app that utilizes the out-facing camera to recognize facial expressions of those around you, and then annotate them in place and basically be able to give you that learning effect right away. So we've built some basically 3D face tracking tech that is pretty lightweight and runs on a small end device like Google Glass. It's based on a 3D model. So the idea here is that we can recognize expressions in all kinds of different poses, even when I'm not primarily looking directly at your face, which is often what occurs in autism. And what we do from that is we recognize an expression in an outer face. Now, we combine this expression information data with other sensors. So for example, one thing we built is actually, this is something we're testing right now, which is a small $26 eye tracking device based on some work by OpenShades, and it clips onto glass. And we're testing it with kids. We're going to be testing it with kids at Stanford. And the idea is that we can use this device not only to track what's going on outside of David's frame, but also how David relates to the people that he's interacting with. So for example, whether he makes eye contact. And then that leads to real-time social cues, right? So the idea is, for example, if David goes on a rant and he keeps talking and talking and talking and talking about trains, and I don't want to hear about trains anymore, and I start losing eye contact and sort of get more and more bored, we can recognize that, and that can lead to the social cue of pause, ask a question, right? We can then reinforce mimicking expressions as well as items like eye contact, and we can take that data and relate it back to behavioral therapy, right? So for example, with eye contact, we have a very, very analytical, measurable tool where in behavioral therapy, we can really track David's progress. And that, at the end of the day, is supposed to close the loop and allow David to take his glass off. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Catalin. Let's start with Bonin, and we'll limit the Q&A part here to make sure we stay on track.
So, again, I didn't see what's the business model, here. So maybe you could just touch on that. I'm not the biggest fan of developing a tech solution around glass. My personal opinion, I love glass and I think it's going to go someplace, but my personal opinion is to believe that everybody's going to wear the same pair of glasses is crazy. So when you're building the hardware that fits the glass, I just worry a little bit about that. I guess I don't understand why you wouldn't try to do something on a more ubiquitous device versus glass. That's kind of where I got stuck on.
Yeah, so that's something that people have kind of tried in the past. Just working with mobile phones, and Rosalind Picard, who we talked to a lot, has been doing this stuff at MIT, and we found that glass really does help to take it into the real life situation and can make for much more unobtrusive cues. So that's really one of the goals of this project, is to build something that doesn't interrupt the normal flow of life, right? And now to touch on the business model, there's really two answers here. The first one is there's really not a business model yet. I believe that the path of this, the path of making this work is through commercialization. And my current intuition is really that eventually the right solution is to sell this as an add-on to behavioral therapy and to charge behavioral therapists, both for the data they get out of it and for adding the device to therapy. The second answer that I haven't been able to talk about today is that Senshin as a company is actually using some of the same underlying technology and sells this as an educational analytics school, and is making quite a lot of money doing that. Good run.
Again, I think it's a great opportunity. I think your presentation took me a little while to understand, kind of what exactly you're doing. So figuring out how to crisp it up, I think is important.
Sure.
I also think trying to figure out other ways to evolve from this to be a product, to be more of a platform. Are there other kinds of applications? That's where you can create more value and a network around your platform. But it's going to require, as I mentioned, other things, partnerships. I actually think the Google Glass is an interesting form factor, not so much for the general use that some people talk about, walk into a meeting room knowing who's there, but for these vertical applications. So maybe getting some of the funding from some of the Google seed funds that have popped up to focus on Google Glass specifically might be worth considering.
I love it. I think it's a brilliant business model. It's the first application I've seen for Google Glasses that I think is really prolific and has a really good purpose. And as I said earlier, having one of the guys who helps us build our movie models did it because he had autism and as a kid had to teach his brain to read other people's cues, and in the process learned how to understand audiences. I think you and Nightingale should partner up because they've already got a revenue model and they've got subscribers, and if you give them the glasses, all of a sudden you guys now have a pretty good partnership, and I'd invest in that.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand if it's interactive, if it cues right back to the person without a therapist there. That actually, so it's almost a two-way communication, and that's what the glass. I think that was what was missing in your presentation, which I think is the fascinating part, is that the understanding is that this cues the autistic boy or patient on how to react to what he sees. So it's almost changing what he sees into an expression that he can now interpret. And I think that's the brilliance behind this, but I don't think it came through in the presentation.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mean, that's really the core idea behind this, is to be able to give a cue in real time to them, but also be able to reward them for behavior, right? So eye tracking is one example of that.
Just wait to fix your presentation until I invest.
Okay.
All right. Well,
You're also trying to roll up all the autism startups here. Autism Inc.
Let's all thank Catalin.
Ryan Scher.
Now, last certainly not least, we have Spencer, who will talk about his company Skip.
So, who here likes waiting in checkout lines? One sec. These people don't look like they like it very much either. I actually think it's very absurd that we still have to wait in checkout lines in this day and age. So I'm here to talk to you about Skip, which is my company, and it's essentially fast track for retail. So here's how it works. You go into the store, you pick up the items that you want to buy. Each item has an RFID tag on it, a passive RFID. As you walk around the store, we detect the goods and localize them to you. We determine when you're leaving and charge your method of payment that you have on file with us. So you never have to wait in line again. It's pretty awesome for a consumer. It's pretty obvious why that is. And it's even better for a retailer because all of a sudden you have way less overhead. You limit your shoplifting because each item is electronically secured. And finally, you collect tons of data. So you know exactly where consumers are, which items they pick up, how long they're holding them, and what they ultimately buy. So this enables you to do an unprecedented amount of in-store analytics. You can build custom purchasing profiles for users, do in-store recommendations, and most importantly, have more competitive pricing because you're lower overhead. So from an installation perspective, we go into the store, we put antennas on the ceilings, giving us 100% coverage of the square footage, and we use a combination of patent-pending RFID localization method and computer vision to determine when you're leaving and what you're leaving with, and charge you automatically. So the technology is really the most impressive thing about this. We've been able to improve the location accuracy of RFID 20 times. It used to be a 2-meter accuracy, plus or minus 2 meter. We got it down to plus or minus 10 centimeters. We've also addressed two of the biggest issues with using RFID in retail, which is when you have tens of thousands of items being read simultaneously and be able to read all of them. And when you have tens of people walking through the same space, absorbing a lot of that energy with their bodies because humans are made of water. So this translates into a 25 to 50% increase in profits for retailers who deploy this store-wide. Kind of a case study to break this down is what's done with JCPenney. So we could assume that we get 25% adoption, which is slightly high. We can reduce cashier staff by 20%, proportional reduction in shrinkage. All in all, totals out to $1.5 to $1.8 billion a year saved by the retailer. We charge transaction fee, sales data and analytics, and advertising is how we make our money. And basically the retailer pays us $1 for every $10 they save, which is very reasonable and huge for physical retail. So this is not a new trend, RFID in physical retail. Retailers are adopting it every month. You have JCPenney, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, American Apparel, Fast & Nobile, Burberry. The list is growing every single month. So we're just capitalizing on this in order to build the one-click buy of the physical world and help physical retail compete with Amazon, who has much lower cost basis and much more intelligence. Thank you.
Start with you.
So if I'm a retailer and I have 5,000 suppliers from around the world that sell me product, how am I chipping each product?
So we're actually targeting retailers that are already item level RFID to start. So these retailers have already gotten their suppliers on board and are tagging everything. You have like Marks and Spencer's, you have American Apparel, Burberry, Fast & Nobile, JCPenney's going there, Macy's, Bloomingdale's are going there. Actually, American Apparel went 100% RFID, and they increased their sales annually 14%.
But that's because they make all their own product. I mean, if you talk about a JCPenney's or a Walmart or most of these retailers, they have tens of thousands of suppliers, many of them which are coming from overseas. I mean, unless you're going to they're going to chip in their warehouse and tag in their warehouse, you're going to have a huge complexity issue of getting every individual supplier to tag product.
You're correct. That's why we really like to partner with powerful retailers like the Walmarts, the Costco's of the world that have a lot of pressure to exert on their suppliers, because this is actually crucial for them to continue being relevant in the age of e-commerce.
I think you have a bigger journey than you think with those kind of suppliers and the multiple. There are just so much product coming in from so many different places, and they're not as sophisticated as you think. So you're probably better off focusing on sort of smaller retail chains that do a lot of their own supply base. I mean, the reason for American Apparel is they make their own. They're completely vertically integrated, so it works perfectly. Are you installed anywhere yet?
We did one installation in Palo Alto at a chocolate store, a high-end chocolate store of all places. And we're actually looking for partners to open up a future store in New York right now.
And the other thing is, how do you plan on making certain that everybody's registered in a store? That a lot of people don't make a lot of money. They pay cash, and they go through stores.
So you'll still have cashier lanes to take cash, and they just demagnetize the chips. So they kill the chips with an electromagnet at exit, so they don't set out the system. Yeah.
I think it's it's a hot spot right now. There's obviously a lot of people focused on this, and certainly it's going to be great when it gets adapted and retailers can do it. Obviously, I think your numbers are right if it could happen. I think to Lynn's point, you have a ton of competition in the space. Like Google. Which is going to be difficult, I think. But if you can create something that's very unique and get a first mover advantage, then I think you're onto something. I have a little bit of an issue with the data analytics because I think consumers will have a really big problem if they know that they're going to walk into a store and that their data on their phone is being sold to other people or used by other people.
So I think it's a big idea. It's a great name, and it's a tough market because it's super competitive. So looking at ways to partner, maybe with some of the payment guys, American Express or MasterCard, or maybe some retailers, say to Walmart or somebody that you're going to get an exclusive for some period of time as a way to do something a little bit different. Think about the partnership strategy. The other thing I think about would be patents because because it's super competitive. If you do have some unique intellectual property, protecting it sooner rather than later will ultimately be a real part of the value creation equation here.
We have about 10 patents pending currently.
I'm so bullish on this space. I mean, these, as well as targeting and aisle, will transform sales. And so I'm with you. My concern, RFID has been tried a lot of times, and it hasn't really worked. And you have to think about, I think the point that was made, which is people who receive from a lot of different resellers, it's impossible, even for us. So we sell, 8 billion products a month. The retrofitting of all the factories to be able to tag every single thing with RFID is near impossible at this stage right now, and there hasn't been enough impetus on all the other folks that look like us to make that happen. So RFID has been really hard for in-store. But what I love that was said here is there's probably a place to just focus on the folks that create their own product. I saw Billabong in Brazil. First of all, the way they were doing inventory used to take them a half a day. It took them 5 minutes to just walk around and blast everything because it was RFID tag. So I think focusing on those smaller manufacturers, you might actually be able to carve out a niche where a lot of the startups that I see right now are not focusing because they're thinking Walmart and not realizing the roadmap that really lays ahead of them. So I'd love to spend more time talking to you about it, but I'm bullish in this space. So
I'm in if Bonin's in.
Done.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause for Spencer. So we've certainly heard a number of wonderful presentations, entrepreneurs who are thinking big and doing. So I suspect that the voting will be difficult. At this time, let's pull up our slide here. So just like you see on American Idol, we're going to be texting to the number 22333. We ask you right now to text your vote for which presentation you believe should be the winner of today's pitch competition. While that's going, I'm going to ask all of our judges to just give some overall remarks about what they saw, general feedback and general thoughts. And then once we've had a chance to compute, we will present our winner. But let me actually start with Bonin. And let's start with Ryan. Ryan,
I never have anything to say.
This is the most disruptive thing that we've come up with so far. So,
well, I think first of all of these are obviously targeting high growth areas. Each one of them, I think, is in a market that makes sense. I think that from my perspective overall, I mean, obviously, if it wasn't clear, I like the autistic Google Glass, product seems to be the most niche and the most relevant today. I think that the Skip product, I think, is a great product, but I think to Bonin's point, we need to understand a lot more about it and understand who they're going to partner with, and there's going to be a big cost to subsidizing factories. I think overall, they're all very good. I think, unfortunately, the gym product is probably the most difficult proposition from a business model. But if it goes the direction that Lynn's talking about, to use it for apparel and dressing and cosmetics, and I think there's a lot to it.
Steve, let's go to you.
5 great companies. First of all, thank you, Milken Institute, for focusing on the role startups play. We have a lot of big companies here and big global forces here, but startups ultimately are going to be driving our economy and innovating and making sure we remain the most innovative entrepreneurial nation. So the fact that you're focusing on that and really celebrating, I hope it's an event you do in future years. That's the main thing. And I thought all 5 were great ideas. You did a great job of kind of curating them, and I think that everybody did a great job on presenting. I think the key theme across all of them was reinforces this need for partnership, which I think is going to be increasingly the model for companies in the future. The days of just launching a product, sticking an app in the App Store and hoping you strike gold is we're moving away from that towards models in healthcare and retailing and education, other kinds of things that really are going to require more partnership. So taking these ideas to scale, the question is not just about the product or how you turn it into a platform, but what is your strategy on partnerships? That's really got to be front and center, not just an afterthought.
Great, thank you. And Lynn, why don't we turn to you?
Yeah, I would agree with Steve. I mean, I own 75 businesses. I'm always hungry for innovation and great product. And if you've got a great product, I would say find a partner, find someone who can get a distribution channel for you, because everything's moving so quickly that even if you have a great product, something better might come out before you ever get it to market. So I think the idea of partnership and distribution is really important.
Sadly, I'm going to underscore that too. Scale. What's the plan to get to scale? And I also would say, first of all, yes, I want to thank all of the guys. I thought it was spectacular presentations, and I think that you guys are all pushing the envelope, and I think innovation is where my heart's at, and that's what I try to spend a lot of my time doing. Having launched accelerators inside of organizations, both when I was at Pepsi and here, and dealt with, I think, almost 100 startups now to date that have run through accelerators internally, I think most startups underestimate the power that scale can bring from big organizations like us. And they also look at big organizations in the wrong way. A lot of folks look at them as a paycheck, and that's the last thing I think you want to look at them. It's not about getting us to spend money with you. It's actually about us. Again, 8 billion products. If I put your app on every single packaging, theoretically, we could launch 8 Facebooks, And so those are the kind of things you want to look at. How can you get knowledge, experience, scale, case studies to prove it works, an opportunity with partners, and think differently about how to partner with them. So I would just underscore.
I just wanted to add one thing. One thing that I felt was really lacking from a lot of the presentations was any sort of financial model. I mean, we're being asked to analyze a business, and one of the 4 things we're supposed to look at is the financial viability, and I didn't really feel like any of them had any sort of financial model or explanation of how they were going to make money and what the long-term growth strategy was.
All right, well, this was our first ever fast pitch competition, and we hope to do this in the future. At the Milken Institute, entrepreneurship and innovation are critical things that we look at. We focus a lot on access to capital, but capital doesn't mean anything if you don't have good ideas to fund. So we're happy to be a part of this. I want to specifically thank Nancy Ozeas of the Milken Institute, who conceived of this idea. Also our partners at Kairos Society, Aaron Barker, who you can catch up with after the event. Certainly thank all of our judges for making this a success, and most importantly, thanking all of our entrepreneurs for presenting today. So let's give them all a round of applause. So with that, assuming our technology worked as it should, wow, this is quite heavy. Look at this prize. I have the prize here.
It would be heavier if you had a check wrapped around it.
So with that, we will put up our results and determine the winner of the first ever Milken Institute Fast Pitch Competition, and it is Cataline Voss, the founder of Senshin. It's heavier than it looks.
I think that's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks a lot.